2, 1. Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth podcast alongside Richie Carni, sitting in for Mike today. I am Mark Schlereth. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Make sure you throw the comments out there. I try to answer just about every comment in the comments section on the podcast. So put out your questions. Had a great question the other day, and maybe we can get into it.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start there.
Sure.
But we got all kinds of things. Cut down day, rosters, all the kind of nuance of that. But one of the questions that came out the other day was letting your quarterback call protections versus kind of what Kyle Shanahan does in San Francisco. Set it and forget it. Like, set the protection and forget it. And how that has changed over the course of the years. Oh, by the way, first off, before I even start there, Richie, welcome. You may Wally Pip Mike Evans.
Maybe. Listen, you got to keep, always keep an eye over your shoulder. You don't always have to fully turn your head, but at least keep an eye because you never know who could be coming up in the wings. So, Mike,
right.
Careful, buddy.
So I always answer all the questions in the comment sections on the podcast. This was a question that came into me. It just popped into my head. You know how I am, squirrely. So it popped into my head. And it was something that I was like, that's really interesting how people, that's a good question. So the question was, San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan likes to put it on his offense to set the protection in the huddle and then leave it. Now, you can always change some things, whether if something comes up, the quarterback sees something that he thinks is important, he can change the protection. But there's that kind of theory, and that's the way it was when I played. We didn't let the quarterback set the protection. Right. The offensive line set the protection. Here's where we're going, and we cheated the protection. The only protection we allowed the quarterback to call was something we called point. And that was when we broke the huddle and the quarterback would look in nickel situations, who's the biggest potential blitzer, and let me turn the protection to that guy. So the quarterback becomes vital in your protection system from the standpoint of you've got to know where you're unprotected, and you become the guy that's got to get rid of the ball if that guy where you're unprotected comes. So then the other theory, and what a lot of teams have gone to, is letting the quarterback set the protection at the line of scrimmage all the time. The issue that you get into with that, and the reason I don't like it, is the quarterback will see something. He'll set the mic, say, for instance. He'll go, okay, Richie, let's say you're the mic. And he's like, hey, 54, that guy right there, he's the mic. Blue 80. No, check. 47's the mic. 47's the mic. Set it!
Yeah.
Right? And all of a sudden, you don't have time to reestablish what you're going to do as a group up front. And so for us, I want to have the time to set it, to see what's coming, and then to be able to make sure that I don't get edged, that I don't get stuck in a situation where I'm at a disadvantage, because ultimately for me as an offensive lineman, I'm one of the worst athletes on the field. So if I get caught in a situation where I don't have time to communicate, and it doesn't have time to go like that telephone line that you played in grade school from one to the next, then I get edged, meaning somebody's on my edge who's a better athlete than me, and all of a sudden I'm in trouble. So that's why I prefer what San Francisco does. Let's set it and kind of forget it, and then we adjust. The quarterback has to adjust on the fly based upon what comes, if we can't pick it up.
Well, I think kind of the difference between what it sounds like you're describing with the Kyle Shanahan model and maybe something that's more leaned upon the offensive line, the crock pot protection, right? Set it and forget it. This is what we're going to run, and based on our scheme that we run, this blocking pattern should work almost regardless of what the defense presents us, and any tweaks and changes need to be made come from the front to the back, not the back to the front. And I guess if you're going to lean toward that philosophy or letting the quarterback take on the brunt of that responsibility, and you can speak to this as good as any, probably depends on the personnel that you have in each of those departments. You were a part of two pretty legendary offensive line units, both in Washington and in Denver, and clearly had the talent from left to right, tackle to tackle, and everything in between on both sides to operate that way, if that's the way the offensive coordinator and such so chose. But if you're in a system or a situation like we've seen over the years with like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady or somebody who can dissect the line of scrimmage with like savant-like accuracy and just have complete command of it, I think that as a play caller, as a head coach, as a coordinator, whatever, would give me a little bit more confidence to say, hey, Tom, hey, Peyton.
Sure.
You go ahead and play air traffic controller here and get everybody lined up in your symphony instead of if you have somebody who's under that level, which almost every quarterback that has ever lived falls under that level. It's maybe easier as a collective front from the offensive line to say, hey, here's the protection, and if we have to tweak it, we can communicate that back with you, and you can make these minor changes.
Right. I think that, and I understand, philosophically what you're talking about with Peyton and with those guys. I just wanted that control. I wanted to have, as an offensive line, that control, knowing that this is the protection, we're turning weak. And now we have the authority to say, okay, let's say we turn weak in a slot formation, meaning, okay, we've got the weak side linebacker, but, hey, we've got a slot, so a corner is on that inside receiver. Now I can look at that guy, go, is he a potential blitzer? What does his body language look like? And is there somebody from a safety standpoint that motors over the top of that guy that can cover that slot player? So now all of a sudden I'm alert, like it keeps me on my toes going, all right, I got to be alert to that guy because he's a potential blitzer, and we can take that off the quarterback's plate if we cheat the protection from the will to the slot defender, the nickel guy. So, I want my offensive line to be in charge of that. Now, here's the other thing that I think is important where a lot of teams forget or a lot of teams don't understand the value of kind of the global perspective of protection. One of the benefits is I take that off my quarterback's plate. And the quarterback has so much to think about over the course of a game that I want to be able to take a few things off his plate, right? I want to have what Sean Payton and many other coaches call breather plays. I want to have a couple breathers. So if you're in charge of the entirety of the offense for 65 straight plays, dude, that is a lot of mental gymnastics. And where do you get a break as a quarterback? That's why I think tank plays, what we call tank plays in the running game. Hey, man, we're going to run 18 handoff force. And it's good against every front they play. So for the quarterback, 18 handoff force on 2, 18 handoff force on 2, ready, break. Go, hand it off. Don't think.
Right.
And you know what? One exhale. Because third down and 7, and you're going, no, 54, no, 13's the mic. No, let's change it to this, right? Bam. And all of a sudden you're working the clock and and then you're thinking about the progression of the route. And, what do I have? Where's my check down? What's the front side of my protection? That front side protection is great for an access throw on the corner. But if I don't get access, if they're in a cover 2, now I got to get to the backside. There is a lot of stuff that you have to think about at that position. And if you have to think about protection and you have to think about changing the run game, and you have to think about, hey, man, is this a across the board read or is this a split field read? Where I'm looking at one protection on one or one coverage on one side versus another coverage on the other side. And I've got a route beater for this side and a route beater for that side. And that's a lot of stuff that is on your plate that isn't on everybody else's plate. And so I'm just a believer that for my quarterback to have the best, I think you have to put responsibility on other people's plates. And that's just how we did it. And it's my personal feeling. It's a better way to do it. Now, you may get caught a couple of times. There's no question you're going to get caught a couple of times. But that's where the quarterback has to be also kind of in charge of the rhythm and the timing of the offense. The timing of the offense and the timing of route progressions has to be precise. And the timing of the offense, and I talk to Joel Klatt about this all the time, timing of the offense, Fox #1 broadcaster on college football, the timing of the offense is kept in the quarterback's feet. And so I want to know as a protector what the timing of each throw is based on the route combination called. That way I can change my set. So all of a sudden I get a 5-step drop, but I know this ball is out. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt this ball is out. So all of a sudden I go, wait a minute, this is a great change-up set for me where I can attack the line of scrimmage and almost run block this even though we're taking a 5-step drop. And I've done it in games where I've had defensive linemen tell me, you can't do that. hey, well, guess what, dumb shit? I just did. So what are you going to do? Like it was almost like it's against the rules to run block me on a 5-step drop. Like the guys, you can't do that. I just did that.
Right.
That's exactly what I just did.
What is actually stopping me at this point?
So when you do that, all of a sudden those defensive linemen start thinking, well, wait a minute. Like, is this a run? Is this a pass? Is that like it changes your ability to become the aggressor? And it's one thing that I always talk about with teams is I want to take passive out of pass protection. Right. And a lot of that is due to what the quarterback calls and how he calls it and the timing of the offense kept in his feet and letting me be in control of protection. So it's a great question that came on the podcast, that came in one of the what do you call those things, the threads or
Comments.
Whatever it is, comment threads. Yeah. So great question, and just popped into my head, Richie. I am sorry, that was a tangent.
No, it's good because I think that all the things that you're describing to me when you're talking about timing and rhythm and connectivity and all these things and how it translates from the blocking scheme and the protection philosophy outward to how you manage your route combinations and things of that nature, all of that requires like synergy. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm curious from your perspective as somebody who's worked intimately within a couple of NFL organizations as a player and then has been just as intimately involved in your post-playing career as a broadcaster around the NFL. How are those conversations taking place right now and impacted during this current phase of the NFL season where cutdown day was yesterday, and yet over the next 3 weeks, there's going to be a lot of fluidity and movement from these initial 53-man rosters. So how do you take all those conversations and the clear need for connection and synergy, but then also manage trying to add and fill in parts on the back end of your 53-man roster for guys to have to get on a moving train?
Yeah, I think it's like having relationship, right, and having that trust is big. And one of the guys that was released that had a really good preseason for the Denver Broncos was Sam Ellinger, the quarterback. And the reports out right now is that he had 2 teams that offered to sign him to their 53-man roster that he turned down to come back to the practice squad with the Denver Broncos. And that has to do with trusting the head coach, trusting the offensive system, and believing that even spending a year on the practice squad where you're going to have kind of an NFL indoctrination to kind of real NFL coaching and real progression coaching and really growing as a player is going to out-benefit a higher salary and being a backup on the 53-man roster with a team that's crappy and a team that's probably going to change coaching staffs a year from now. And it's really it's a really interesting thing. So you look at a couple of guys who have really turned their careers around. So I'll take 2 guys. Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, first overall draft pick, Cleveland Browns, played pretty well early, struggled late, ends up going to Carolina, at Carolina, he was so low on the depth chart at Carolina that I can show you pictures, and I've talked to him about this. He's running at scout team defensive end.
Wow.
He's in practice, scout team defensive end for the Carolina Panthers. That's what he's doing. Then he gets moved to Sean McVay and the Rams. I remember, I think it was a Christmas Day game against the Broncos where he hung 50 on their asses.
Yes, he did.
Right?
That was the end of the Nathaniel Hackett era, I believe.
The end of the Nathaniel Hackett era. And then all of a sudden he gets exposed to Sean McVay, exposed to a different way of coaching, a different way of seeing progressions, a different way of understanding, goes to Tampa, gambles and bets on himself on a 1-year deal, and bam, strikes it big, plays great. He's been phenomenal. Sam Darnold, same thing. He goes to Carolina from the Jets. And I remember talking to Kyle Shanahan 2 years ago, doing a game with Sam Darnold in it, and talking to him about just Sam Darnold's career. And he goes, listen, man, he goes, first off, he goes to the Jets, and the Jets are running the Peyton Manning offense. And Kyle goes, there's one guy that can run the Peyton Manning offense.
Probably named after him.
And it's Peyton Manning,
Yep.
yes, right? He goes into an untenable situation, a situation where you can have success, and he fails. Okay, then he goes to Carolina, where it's Matt Rule's collegiate kind of air raid almost system, and it's not a progression throwing system. And the first time that he got into a progression system was like the last 4 or 5 weeks of that year when Matt Rule gets fired. And so then he goes to San Francisco and he has 2 job offers to compete for a starting job. And he tells Kyle, I want to be here because I want to learn how to play NFL football. And so he spends a year in NFL football rehab. And then he does what he does in Minnesota last year. Now he's a starting quarterback in Seattle. Like, it matters. And so for Ehlinger, he looks at the benefit of a guy like Sam Darnold, looks like the benefit of a coach who's got who's got, you know, a track record and an established offense and can really teach you kind of how to play the game. Like, he looks at that and goes, that's where the value is, because someday I aspire to be a starting quarterback, and I'm not going to do it bouncing around to organizations who are crappy organizations with coaching staffs who are going to get fired.
In a world that we live in that is full of instant gratification from a consumer perspective and a demand to have things right now and microwaved and this and that, there is something to be said about putting the weight behind a decision like that, especially in a league like the NFL that is actively trying to replace you every single year as a player. There's a brand new crop of guys coming in, and then you have infighting with free agents going to other teams, and coaches and GMs and front offices all trying to amass the best possible roster year in and year out to save their own jobs. So to have that be the dynamic and the waters that a guy like Sam Ehlinger is swimming in, and to have him say, I'm willing to sacrifice the short-term path and opportunity to take the field where I can then try to take matters into my own hands and carve out a starting role in the NFL, to say, no, I am okay with remaining in a situation where I am the clear third option in the quarterback room, but in a quarterback room with a quarterback coach in Davis Webb, who I believe is a aspiring star and a rising star in the coaching ranks, somebody who works well as a former quarterback with quarterbacks, under a offensive guru like Sean Payton, and in a room with guys like Jared Stidham and even Bo Nix, who, despite being similar-ish in age to Sam Ehlinger, can teach him things. I think that is a notable and smart sacrifice and decision to say, I'm gonna resist the temptation to go to Carolina or somewhere where I might be able to play sooner, Cleveland, right, and make a 53 and stay where I feel confident in the teachers to be able to mold me.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And right now, you mentioned just rosters in general, right? And cut down day was Tuesday. Now teams are starting to put their practice squads together and all that stuff. And one of the things I always think about this day is you can understand the depth of your football team by the cuts you make and how many of those guys go to other teams. And I remember doing a Carolina game, first game of the year last year, and I was in New Orleans, and I'm talking to some of the Carolina coaches, and they're like, listen, man, we picked up off of waivers after the big cuts 7 guys off the waivers. And I think it was 7 guys. I might have the numbers a little bit confused, but it was like 7 guys, and 5 of them are going to start for us. That we picked that couldn't make their teams, other NFL teams. And so if you're an NFL fan right now, look at your roster as currently constructed, and over this next week, that roster gymnastics that you talk about, like there's some veteran players that will get signed after week 1 because teams don't want to fully guarantee their salaries.
Right.
But there will be some gymnastics. Look how many guys from other teams that got cut that you bring on your roster, if you're an NFL fan in Carolina or New Orleans or one of these other places, that make your 53-man roster. They got cut from the Broncos, they got cut from San Francisco, they got cut from the Rams, they got cut from Philadelphia, they got cut from one of these other teams. See how many guys you bring in that make that 53, because it'll tell you kind of where your team is in a progression of building a roster that's sustainable, that can overcome a few injuries.
And Sean Payton here locally in Denver has been vocal about not just that concept, but about a legitimate fear, as he called it, as the Broncos go through their cut-down process to get to their initial 53, and from a trade to Devon Vele to some of the other players, including Sam Ehlinger, that they had to let go of, where there's a legitimate fear to say, hey, we have to be 100% sure that we pick the right 7 guys in the defensive line room, or 4 guys in the linebacker room, or 5 in the receiver room, because there is nothing worse from the mouth of Sean Payton from a coaching perspective than cutting a guy, and whether you can get him back on the practice squad or not, ends up going somewhere else and succeeding with the vision that you could have had for him.
Yeah, and that's one. He always talks about Rob Ninkovich, who was in the building with the New Orleans Saints, and they cut him, and he went to New England and played really well for a long time, and how that move still haunts him to this day. Speaking of New England and moves, what about the Cole Strange pick from a couple of years ago?
29th overall in the first round.
In 2022, gets released by the New England Patriots. And that is one of those, it's probably one of those situations in New England why Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick eventually kind of parted ways. Yeah. Obviously, Tom Brady was gone, but some of the moves that just looked peculiar, like this whole 24-year-old girlfriend thing.
Yes.
Right? Like this, we should have seen something coming when all of a sudden you've got a quarterback in Mac Jones, who's a first-round pick, who really played pretty well his rookie year, well enough to, be one of the alternates to the Pro Bowl type of thing.
Yeah, they made the divisional round of the playoffs, the wild card round of the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden there's a falling out, and Bill Belichick's going to outfox everybody in the National Football League and take 2 fired coaches, one defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, and one former special teams coach in Joe Judge, and he's going to combine these 2, amalgamate them together, and they're going to become one offensive coordinator for a second year, right? I think it was a second year in the league, Mac Jones, and all of a sudden it's going to fall apart, and he's going to bounce around now on his third team in San Francisco. So it just is that was the start. The Cole Strange thing was, strange to say the least. I think the funniest sound on that whole pick, when he got picked 29th overall, they had a live feed in the draft room of the Los Angeles Rams where Sean McVay goes, and we wasted all that time thinking we could get him with the pick 104.
Right. Fourth rounder.
You're thinking everybody else in the world had him as a 4th rounder, but you saw something because you're smarter than everybody, where he was the 29th overall pick.
And again, let's just say in a world, because there is something to be said, and Sean Payton's actually a big advocate of this. Like, hey, if I identify a guy in the draft that I like, I'm going to go up and get him. I'm going to trade some picks to move up in the middle rounds to get a Troy Franklin, or once upon a time an Adam Troutman.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's my guy, and I believe in my system and what he can do in it, and I don't care if I have to spend a little bit more to go get it versus waiting and see if it falls into my lap. And when it hits, you look like a genius. When it doesn't, you look like the New England Patriots. But even in that world where you accept that premise, if you've got a draft room where a guy who the NFL consensus says is a 4th round interior offensive lineman, and you take him with a top 30 pick in the NFL draft,
right?
That's probably an indication that you need a better draft room.
Yeah, well, 100%. It's probably one of the reasons that Bill Belichick is coaching in North Carolina right now. It just is. That's one of those strange ones. One of the other things I want to talk to you about, what did you make of the Carolina Panthers trading Adam Thielen, who's led them in catches the last 2 years, production the last 2 years, had a hamstring injury last year, so it limited some of his production. But in 2023, guy had 1,000 yards and 100 catches, and now he's going to a Minnesota team that has 2 outstanding guys on the outside. He can play in the slot, where he really has become kind of a slot receiver and be that third down kind of, option route target for the Minnesota Vikings. What'd you make of that play?
Well, I think it's both moves, both the move for Carolina to bring in Thielen and now the move for Minnesota to try to bring him back are rooted in the exact same logic. Because what was Adam Thielen to a guy like Bryce Young, who was starting to start his career? A security blanket. Mm-hmm. He was a reliable, possessionary type receiver who, yes, he athletically never really was and certainly isn't at this point going to like take the top off a defense or, just be an absolute man beater. But he's somebody that understands the nuances of the position, can find ways to get open in space and be a reliable target for a quarterback who, despite the success in Bryce Young that he had at Alabama, was swimming a little bit at the start of his career because of the lack of talent in Carolina. So I can see that being a reason why they bring Adam Thielen in at that point. But now Bryce Young's not really swimming with the floaties as much as he was before. They've got a guy like Tet McMillan, who they think is going to be a stud. And maybe you want to, in the same way that the Broncos jettisoned Devon Vele to make more room and opportunities for their young guys in Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant, you kind of clear that path a little bit. Whereas the Vikings are about to officially start the clock on their rookie quarterback and said, hey, obviously we got Justin Jefferson, right? And Jordan Addison's going to serve a little baby suspension to start the season. But would our rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, who had his rookie year robbed from him due to injury in the preseason, now going into his pseudo-rookie year, could he benefit from having more talent and depth at the wide receiver position with that same mentality of just being a possessionary, third down, kind of like the player that always comes to mind in my mind, even though he's not a wide receiver, when I think of that, is like Jason Witten. Jason Witten was never a blow-your-socks-off, athletic, crazy tight end as a receiving threat, but damn it, that guy was always open on 3rd and 7 right at the sticks when Tony Romo and company needed to move the chains. And that's how I view Adam Thielen and his value within an offense.
I think it's fair, and I think there's always those guys that just have a knack for being open, have a knack. Like you look at Travis Kelce. Mm-hmm. Travis Kelce is not going to run by people anymore, but at the stem, at the top of his route, his ability to create instant separation and give his quarterback a target is what makes him special. And those guys, having those guys on your roster, that is special. And speaking of special, how about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift?
Hey, now, listen, that is, if you had told me 5-6 years ago that the biggest worldwide alert coming from ESPN and all these major networks was an engagement announcement for Travis Kelce, leaving out who he's engaged to, period, which definitely factors into it, I would have been stunned. This what Adam Schefter is putting out breaking news tweets. We've got major networks across the board putting out graphics. It says like traded, signed. Right. It's like engaged. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, and it just kind of continues to build this like almost storybook Disney movie like arc for a guy like Travis Kelce, who is one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game. He's going to do a backflip into the National Football League Hall of Fame. And now on the twilight of his career, as he's chasing yet another ring and kind of holding on to the last true bastion of this like Chiefs dynasty with Mahomes, where Kelce's such a huge part of it. Tyreek Hill has since gone away. This feels like we're setting up for the final turn of that race, to the point where now that he's going to be a married man about a year from now to the biggest pop star in the world, this legitimately to me could signal the true last season, last rodeo for Travis Kelce in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's his last season. I think last year could have been his last season had it not been for, the quote-unquote off year he had, 98 receptions or whatever it was.
Made it to a Super Bowl for a third straight year.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. But he, like self-admittedly, and I appreciate Travis for this, like he was like, man, I'm disappointed the way I played in that game. I let my team down. All those, he says all the right things.
Sure.
And I believe that. I think he's a stand-up guy that way. I think it's really cool. Although I had these hopes that it wouldn't work out. And I don't root against people, but I just had like this in my mind the next album, if it wouldn't have worked out, was Tight Ends and Loose Morals. And so I had this idea of things that the reason, and I was like, it's going to be the greatest album ever, right? And of course, it has worked out. Good for Travis, good for Taylor. I know Travis, never met Taylor, but yet. But good for them. And it's a cool story. And I tell you what, it has totally opened up a whole nother avenue of NFL fan base. It's exactly what they want.
1,000%. And listen, obviously Taylor Swift dipping her toe and really more than that into the NFL world with this crossover with Travis Kelce was a very polarizing subject for a lot of. You got the Statler and Waldorf section of the NFL fandom. They're like, get her off my TV screen, and but I think it's so narrow-minded to look at it that way, and not the way that who I'm not even living this exact example that I'm about to lay out, but it's the only thing I kept thinking about the more I saw stuff on social media. Think about how many fathers around the country right now are now entering multiple years where they've got the opportunity to sit down and enjoy football with their daughters, who before this would never have no paid attention to that. And now you've got little girls across the country, just in the same way you've got little girls across the country begging their parents to buy them Caitlin Clark jerseys and buy this investment in women's basketball and all that. You've got so many girls and women, old and young, across the country who have developed now an interest in football and getting more eyeballs on it and being able to, beyond the NFL, who's going to get as many eyeballs as they want, create new bonds and memories with their family, with their fathers or their brothers or their husbands, And I just think that's, regardless of what back door you take to get there, because it's Taylor Swift and you like her music, that's just pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's really cool. And the bottom line is, like, as you continue to try to take this game to the world, like the one thing about the NFL, we dominate. The NFL dominates ratings and everything else. I mean, our preseason games outrate World Series and stuff. Like, it's just it's ridiculous, right? Yeah. But the one place that other leagues have it on us, baseball and basketball, is the overall popularity worldwide. Yeah. And so that's what the NFL is trying to do. And what a better ambassador than Taylor Swift to help take the NFL worldwide. I mean, that's just the way it goes. By the way, producer James just hit me up during our Belichick talk. I didn't see it. Belichick and his girlfriend just filed for the trademark on the term gold digger.
She takes your money when you're in need.
How do you trademark? Gold digger's been around forever.
I think we live in a world where more than ever before, you have the opportunity to just rewrite and or erase history and say, this is mine or this isn't yours or whatever it is, with like less barriers of resistance than we've ever seen. It's kind of the Wild West. You can just do whatever you want.
Like, that term, to me, has been around forever. You just can't...
Like back when they were actually digging for gold here in America.
Yeah, you just can't take the term gold digger. Like you don't have any...
Also, what are you trademarking that for? Is there going to be like a UNC Tar Heel gold digger merch line? You know what I mean? Like, is that what are we doing? What are you monetizing?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but we'll see. We'll see exactly what goes on. Hey, listen, for everybody involved in the Stinkin' Truth podcast, we appreciate you guys listening to us. Make sure you throw us a comment. I will answer or try to answer almost every single comment. I do. Some of them are ridiculous. Appreciate the question about protection. That was a fun way to start. We'll be back with you later on in the week. We've got a special guest coming up, Greg Cosell from NFL Films, who's been doing it forever. I've known the guy for 100 years. Is going to jump on the podcast because he loved what we did with Caleb Williams the other day. So he reached out to me and goes, I want to jump on with you guys. Going to be fun. So he's going to join us on Friday on the Stinkin' Truth podcast. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. For Richie, I am Mark. Mike will be back with us later on in the week.